Meeting to order. Roll call from the county clerk.
We have 28 present and 2 absent.
Thank you. We'll have a pledge of allegiance. Please rise. I'll have Supervisor Fitzgerald lead us tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take up. Big brother evening. Are we in compliance with open meetings law, Mr. Administrator?
We are, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve the agenda. So moved by Jacob, seconded by Paulson. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Opposed? Hearing none. The agenda is adopted. Approval of the October 13th, 2020 meeting minutes. If you recall, these are going to be approved by the board. Go ahead. Oh, Amy? Go ahead.
Going to move approval of the minutes as presented.
Second by Supervisor Morris. Any discussion, changes? Anybody notice anything? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the minutes of October 13th, 2020 are approved. I have an opening here for public comment. For anything on the agenda? Everybody listen? Nobody listened for public comment? Okay, we'll proceed to item number 8, public hearing on the 2020 recommended budget. Supervisor Jones.
I move to open the public hearing on the 2021 recommended budget. This is a public hearing required by law.
Do I have a second to that? Second by Supervisor Morris. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The budget is up for discussion. Is there anybody here? Anybody here that would like? Okay.
We have a couple of people that would like to speak.
I don't.
We can allow them to speak.
Yes, I would. Yes, but they're gonna have to speak up because I can barely hear them.
When I speak, can you hear me?
Barely.
Barely. Hang on just 1 second. Stan, hang on just 1 second. See if we can get the volume up here.
Sounds like you gotta turn me up. I'm up.
Yes, we're trying. Right now.
Hello, my name's Jefferson. I live in the town of Lake. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I would like to speak to the need for a full-time water resources position in the Land and Water Conservation Department. Is this the right time to do that?
This is it.
Okay, a few words about me first. I'm a member of the 5-person Rock Lake Committee, a joint committee between the that advises them on issues. I got an echo. Also, I'm a board member of the Rock Lake Improvement Association, a volunteer association of over 150 households. I've lived in the town of Lake Hills for 23 years. I've seen the county water resources person testify at meetings of the city council, the town board, town planning commissions, and at our meetings. This position is important to us for their expertise. Their ability to get legal and scientific information and their resources. This position has helped us with presentations and prepared educational materials for the public. It's helped us secure state grants of over $30,000, and it's enabled us to focus many volunteers on activities that have made a difference in this county. Finally, on a personal note, when my family moved here 23 years ago, the person before Patricia Cicero in this position, which was Mary Nada, she helped us stop the terrible erosion on our property. And this was very important to us at the time. And this happens to folks on a lot of levels, on a lot of contacts that this position has had. Please restore this position to its full-time status so all this important work can continue. And thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak? Eric Compass would like to speak.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, Eric.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment. My name is Eric Compass. I'm a resident of Fort Atkinson. I'm a professor at UW Whitewater in the Geography, Geology, and Environmental Science program, and also the current president of the Hvac Coalition, a nonprofit organization has done a tremendous amount of work in Jefferson County for the last 25 years. And I'd like to reiterate and emphasize what the first speaker, Stan, said about asking for full support for the water resources management or water resources specialist position. This person, Patricia, and the person that would follow her, is key to the success of our organization within the county. They provided support for training volunteers, figuring out where we do our work in the county, and helping us make sure that we help monitor water quality throughout the whole basin, including multiple places in Jefferson County. So we see this position as kind of crucial to the work that we do here in Jefferson County. And I want to emphasize, and I understand it's a time of really tough budget, and that this is one of those positions that will be dearly felt if it's not fully funded. And that organizations like ours won't be able to fill the gap, and that we're resource constrained too, and that we will feel the same just like the rest of residents in Jefferson County. So, along with Stan, I'd like to especially request full funding for this position in the 21 budget to the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak? Anyone else to speak? Anyone else online to speak? If not, Supervisor Jones.
Our county clerk has a thing that she'd like to read into the record
Okay, thank you.
that fits with the public hearing here. Thank you.
Thank you. I have 15 different individuals or groups that had emailed me on they were in favor of funding this position. All of these emails were sent to the board as well as hard copies were provided. I have the first one is Eric Compass on behalf of the Rock River Coalition, Jefferson. Susan Trier, Town of Lake Mills. Wes Dawson, Town of Lake Mills. Patricia Giese, Village of Johnson Creek. Hope Ustick, Town of Lake Mills. Bob and Sue Volanek, City of Lake Mills. Leanna Spencer, Town of Lake Mills. Janet and Jerry Faust, Town of Ixonia. Jean Shearer, Town of Astalon. Tom Steinbach, USDA Watershed Operations. Richard Moen, Town of Oakland. Ronnie Monroe, Town of Astalon. The full board of directors for the Lake Ripley Management District. Gary Anderson, Town of Lake Mills. And the Palmyra Lower Spring Lake District from the executive director. And that is it.
Thank you. One more call out. Anyone else to speak? Anyone else to speak? Anyone else speak? Supervisor Jones.
I move to end the public hearing on the recommended budget for 2021.
Do I have a second to that? Second by Supervisor Paulson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. The budget is back on the table, off the table, and we move on to item 9, special order of business. Administrator Waymeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So tonight, we're taking the opportunity for everyone being here to kind of give an update of the work that's been taking place for almost the last year almost plus, as we've been looking at the future of our facilities and needs in Jefferson County. And so tonight, you're going to hear from various partners and the team that has been working under the guidance of the Building and Grounds Committee. Specifically, you're going to be hearing from Potter Lawson, who's our primary architect design team looking at this and space studies, from Ron Locust and Kevin Anderson. They've also had a subconsultant for the HVAC systems, MEPs, mechanical engineering, plumbing, etc. That's Jared Latham, who we'll be talking later. Also, Moss Brothers was brought in as well. They helped give advice related to construction costs, phasing, and what is a realistic timeline in terms of if you wish to execute such a program. And so you'll have Anthony Moss and some of his partners will be on here tonight too. So when we started this last summer, part of it was beginning to look at our facilities as a whole. And I think as we started the budget going into 2020, we had a conversation of the needs for the capital. And part of it was the recurring themes that we were starting to see, whether it was on the courthouse to what was going on South Campus. And so as we looked at those needs, we also looked at the cost needed to repair these exceeded the annual capital budget that we had. And this would create a need to look at how do we afford to do this in the future? Was it taking out operational capital, no vehicles, et cetera? Do we need to look at some level of debt? And what is the best way to quite honestly move forward? A lot of this was geared around our mechanical systems to start with. And so we looked at some of the old studies that were done, specifically related to the courthouse, jail, and sheriff's department. There was a 2005 venture study, and I know many in this room remember that when that took place. And you saw some recurring themes, but some new themes that came up 15 years later. We also had a company called Facility Dude come in 2014 who did an updated analysis where we started programming some of the capital needs and cost related to some of the infrastructure. And there's a lot of similarities that you'll hear tonight that we saw in that study of things that being beyond their expected life expectancy or need to be replaced soon. So that was part of what looked at. And so a lot of this was geared towards our increasing maintenance needs. A prime example of what we've experienced in our HVAC system, whether it was some of our rooftop units going out on us. And I think most of you are aware, as our rooftop units go out, they actually have to be re-engineered. And so our finance director, he will tell you, and our clerk, last summer was fun for them. As it takes typically 6 to 8 weeks as these units have to be sent off, refurbished, and we hope we have a block somewhere to come back. It was also a cooling tower in the sheriff's department. We had an issue with it going down. It's about 30 years old, and that's on the verge of needing to be replaced. So the point is, at the end of the day, when we talk to the Building and Grounds Committee and the Finance Committee, is do we do a more of a comprehensive study, do an analysis, and bring back to the board to get some guidance on what direction we should be heading into. So one thing is the timing is important on this. I'm going to talk through a timeline here in a little bit, but keep in mind as we go through this process is some of these ideas were pre-COVID. And so when we start looking about telecommuting, I talked to a supervisor today talking about what do we need for HVAC and what's the difference between having office space versus cubes. Those are all things that need to have ongoing conversation as we look at it. Even things such as light systems. You're starting to hear that companies are starting to create UV systems. So you're in this room, it's constantly giving off UV. I don't know the validity behind it, but you're starting to see it. But it was also looking at other issues that we had within the system besides mechanical. Some of it was code issues. The whole courthouse is not sprinklered. Pretty much when you have to go to the courtrooms, to the sheriff's department, that's when the sprinkler system is engaged. We have very limited fire alarm systems on this end of the courthouse. Literally, we have an old bell system, and in many cases, we use a telephone for alert within the courthouse. But we have ADA issues. The majority of the courthouse, especially the trial courts, those were built just before ADA was implemented at the federal level. And so things such as the jury box access and witness stand access and access for the judges to get to their spots, those are not ADA compliant under the code. So those are things that we took at. DOC standards, Department of Correction issues, that's what the sheriff and our jail captain have to work through to ensure we find compliance and making sure we meet those needs going forward. And then we also had to look at some of the Supreme Court rules. The Supreme Court does have rules related to how our courts should function and how they should operate, and in many cases, an exact square footage requirement. And those are all things that we looked at going into this. We also looked at other things such as security, physical security. In many cases, we have some great things in place. An example is our courtrooms right now that we'll talk through is the fact is that you have our inmates come up through a security corridor. You have security for the judges and staff, and you have a point of access from the public from the front that they don't intermix, which is a positive thing. That's also technologies. We've looked at how do we use cameras, but really our door systems need to be integrated and updated as well in terms of that too. Our MIS facility, I think that was a temporary solution almost 10, 15 years ago, and it's still in the same building. So really look at it as what is the right place for our MIS staff to be and located. And so you'll see conversations about that tonight. And really, what is our plans for the future? So when we look at this space and the needs, what does that crystal ball say? How do we look at collaborative spaces potentially for staff? What is the future of services for the county? Is there going to be more intergovernmental cooperation that we have to be responsible for? Is there going to be less? We just don't know. And so those are some of the things that Ron and the team kind of talked through with the staff and some of the committees as we looked ahead. So our timeline to get to this point was last summer, in May through December, we spent a lot of time with the Building Grounds Committee kind of looking at our overall facilities and a real focus point on the courthouse, jail, and sheriff's department. And that launched the decision to move forward with a request for a proposal for architectural services that took place. And so an RFP was issued. We have several respondents. In December, we did interviews with a selection team. And then in January, the Building Grounds Committee and the County Board approved going with Potter Lawson and their team that they put together. At the beginning of February, Potter Lawson met with the Building Grounds Committee, and they began the outline process for their strategy to develop the final design that you'll see before you tonight, and making sure that there were check-ins throughout this process to ensure they were heading down the right path. April 7th, you saw the first review of the space analysis, and they'll talk through that a little bit tonight, but that was, again, was with the Buildings and Grounds Committee, reviewing some of the future needs. And you'll see a 10-year metrics on there, but keep in mind that a lot of times for government, that becomes like a 20-year outlook of what do we need as we look for space needs. In May, we looked at the programming phase, and so that's when the Building Grounds Committee started seeing initial floor plans and different diagrams and how space might look together and what are some of those spaces that should be adjacent. And then in June, we started seeing much more of a defined floor plan. And then in July is when we really started focusing on the Sheriff's Department facility specifically. And then that's when we started seeing the nitty-gritty of the HVAC, plumbing, mechanical systems, electrical systems, and the lovely reports that went with that. Now, part of the reason that came after the fact is we had to define what space needed to have mechanical systems upgraded to. And so that was done after we had a known space of potential square footage that we had to fit into. So that was part of that process and why that took place. Then finally in August, we had a special joint committee meeting of the Executive, Finance, and Building Grounds Committee. And for some of those committee members, you can hear some very similar things that you heard in August. But we're to a total package that we felt was important with the committee chairs that the entire county board needed to be updated where we're at so we can start talking about what are those next phases. And so with that being said, I will turn this over now to Potter Lawson, the team that kind of led this. Ron's going to take the lead in talking through some of these designs and some of the things they went through the process. What we will try to do is save the questions for the end as we go through this. Once Potter Lawson and Moss is done talking through the construction and design phase, then we'll introduce you to Joe Murray from Elders and Associates. So what part of our attempt tonight too is to start taking what does this magnitude of a project look like? What does that look from a finance standpoint package? And so you just get all the information together so we can start having a conversation on decisions. So with that being said, Ron, if you're ready to go ahead and share your screen, and then you can take it from there.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Hopefully everyone can hear me. With me tonight, this is Ron Mulcatt, by the way. With me tonight, I have Kevin Anderson. He's also with Potter Lawson. And we also had Jared Rampoon from Design Engineering to talk from a mechanical system with you tonight. But I want to jump back a little bit as to what Ben had just alluded to. He did a great job identifying a lot of the goals that were perceived with our design study. But But back in February, we had a kickoff meeting with the Buildings and Grounds Committee. And one of the big things that came out of that meeting was we established some goals with the design. And I quickly just want to walk through these. Ben did hit on these a lot. But number one was to assess your existing mechanical system and identify what needs to be done to the facility moving forward for the next 30, 50 years. Second item was to address the architectural building components, such as windows, insulation, interior finishes. We also wanted to improve security. Security is a very important issue, obviously, with this building type. And the county's really done a good job as a starting point with the security within your facility for the court. It's that you've got your single point of entry, all other doors are locked down, a lot of good technology in place, but we wanted to see through the design process that could enhance that and improve the physical space and the technological aspect of a good, secure design. The next item we wanted to discuss was evaluate the department spaces. And I'll get to those in a few minutes here. I'm actually going to have Jared talk in a minute on the MP report. We wanted to evaluate the department space needs, and this was really a collaborative effort for the space needs, in which we sent out questionnaires to the departments. We met several times with the departments and identified those space needs, and I'll go through those in a little more detail in a minute. We also want to improve department efficiency, analyze department locations, and try to improve the workflow between different departments. And then the last item we kind of addressed was building code issues, as Ben had mentioned before, sprinkler systems, ADA. Right now, your building, if we're to do a major remodeling, the state would require us to bring that building completely up to today's standards as far as code. It's not there yet. Adding a sprinkler system, for example, goes a long way in allowing a lot of what your existing facility would have to be accessible and comply with code. ADA, Department of Corrections, Supreme Court, that has mentioned all those items. Talk about those in a little bit more detail once we get into the floor plan. So what I'd like to do next, actually have Jared talk through the mechanical systems review. And then after that, I'll jump back on and we'll go through the floor plan. So Jared?
Great. Thanks everyone for allowing me to present tonight. Just wanted to talk through the mechanical systems report. And if we could go to the first page of that report. Last page currently. So we'll start by talking through each of the mechanical electrical systems. Just to give a quick overview of the building, there's essentially three different parts, three different periods where the building was constructed. So initially there was the courthouse, which was kind of the central piece of the existing courthouse. Then there was an addition added onto the north end. And those two pieces combined are considered the courthouse today. And then to the south, around 1991, there was an addition for the sheriff's and jail, which I'll refer to as the law enforcement center. Those are, I'll refer to those three areas, kind of the courthouse central, the courthouse north, and the law enforcement center throughout my presentation tonight. So first to talk about fire suppression, I know Ben already touched on this a little bit, but the law enforcement center is completely sprinklered. The courthouse is not. So as part of this larger renovation, we've proposed to sprinkler the entire building. The north part of the courthouse has an 8-inch water service already, which is sufficient to support the addition of a sprinkler system to the courthouse, so there wouldn't need to be a new water service or anything brought into the building. We'd just be able to extend from that existing service and add the system there. For plumbing, so this is kind of a floor plan overview of the different areas of the building, just color coded. So there's a couple different levels of these plans. And then the next plan shows where the fire suppression system currently is and currently is not. So the plumbing systems, the building currently has 3 different plumbing systems, 3 separate plumbing service entrances. There's one on the north, one at the courthouse central, and then one for the law enforcement center. Much of the courthouse piping is galvanized piping and is original to the building. So a lot of that distribution piping is 50 years old. Galvanized piping is no longer used in plumbing systems. It has a tendency to leak over time, and my understanding is that there has been several instances of pipe leaking. And so as part of these renovations, we would completely replace all of the distribution piping for the courthouse. The law enforcement center, that piping isn't nearly as old. It's not galvanized. That should be able to remain in place. And so we would not need to replace that piping in full like we would for the courthouse. There are several different water heaters and water softeners for each of the different water services. And most of those are in poor or fair condition. And given the age of them, we would recommend that all of them be replaced as part of the comprehensive renovations that are going to happen. In the jail, much of that sanitary piping is not protected by shredders at the water closets. So what can happen is different materials, things that the inmates might have, whether it's their clothing or something like that, could be put down a water closet and enter the sanitary system. So as part of the renovation, we propose to add shredders for all the water closets that would basically cut up anything that is put into the system to help protect it and allow it to flow through the system, preventing clogs and protect that piping. Because that piping is not currently protected by shredders, we do not know the condition of it. And so we would further evaluate the condition of that piping and potentially replace a lot of that sanitary piping that's below the slab. These are just some pictures of the different equipment that's present in the buildings. HVAC, as has been discussed, this has been a very focused part of our report and our assessment. Is everyone still there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, my computer just went dark. I'm not sure what happened. Oh, there we go. Okay, it's back. Okay, so for the HVAC system, currently the law enforcement center has a chilled water system that is used by all their handlers to provide cooling for the building. The courthouse has original air handlers with condensing units up on the roof. And those condensing units, as Ben mentioned, are so antiquated that basically there aren't any spare parts for those anymore. So to get repairs on those, they need to be shipped off, repaired at a factory, and then brought back, which is a very cumbersome process, expensive process, and not a very efficient process to get cooling back to the building. So as part of this, we would look to and then on the law enforcement center also does have a chilled water system, but its equipment is fairly old and beyond its useful life, coming up on 30 years. And so, and it also does not have redundancy. So while we add a chilled water system for the courthouse, we would simultaneously also replace the chilled water system in the law enforcement center, providing one combined chilled water system for the entire facility. We would provide multiple chillers as well as cooling towers to provide redundancy for the system. And that system would then be an efficient system, a central system for all parts of the building. The courthouse has its own boiler system currently, and the law enforcement center has its own boiler system currently. The boilers in the courthouse were recently replaced just a couple years ago, and since they are new, we would not need to do any work on that system. The boilers for the law enforcement center are also at that 30-year age and are due for replacement. So we would propose to just replace the central equipment for the law enforcement center and keep two separate boiler systems, one serving the courthouse and one serving the law enforcement center, since that setup is already in place and some investment has already been made in some equipment. All air handling units would be replaced. They would have chilled water and hot water from their respective systems. That would include for both the courthouse and the law enforcement center. And then as part of the courthouse renovations that Ron will speak to in a little bit, there's fairly significant rearranging of departments and floor plans. And as part of that, the ductwork, piping, terminal units, all of that would be replaced just to meet the new layouts architecturally. And it's a lot of that ductwork and piping is at the 50-year age and due for replacement anyway. Finally, on HVAC, much of the existing system has a pneumatic control system, which is basically compressed air that's used to modulate valves and things like that in the system. It does not allow very good precise control, and it also does not allow energy efficiency standards to be implemented. So with all this new equipment that would be provided, we would upgrade to a DDC building automation system, which will allow kind of remote monitoring and troubleshooting and alarms, so that as soon as there's an issue in the system, it can be identified, hopefully before even occupants realize it. Currently, with a pneumatic system, you'd have to almost wait for a complaint to realize that there's an issue. So HVAC, there's a fairly significant piece. I mean, we're talking, all the air handlers, very significant hydronic systems, new building automation systems. That's a very significant investment, but all of this would really set the building up for the future. And the equipment would last, a good 20, 25 years in most instances. Moving on to the electrical systems. I'll start with lighting. Most of the existing lighting throughout is T12 lamps. That is a couple generations old of fluorescent lighting. And since it is a couple generations old, it's very inefficient compared to today's standards of LED lighting. So the entire facility is proposed to be upgraded to LED lighting, which not only improves energy efficiency, but also inherently has controls for dimmability and things like that, that would just increase the occupant comfort and occupant control of the lighting in the spaces. The normal power system for the courthouse, a lot of that equipment is very original and old and is due for replacement. The law enforcement center normal power is in good shape, so we would not need to replace that since it's only 30 years old, and electrical equipment lasts longer mechanical equipment does. The courthouse has a generator that backs up the building. That generator is in good condition and would not need to be replaced. However, the generator for the law enforcement center is 30 years old and similar to mechanical equipment, since it's an engine, is due for replacement. And so we would recommend that it be replaced. As Ben mentioned, the fire alarm system in the courthouse is an old bell system and is definitely due for replacement and upgrading. And as part of adding a sprinkler system, a fire alarm system kind of goes along with that. So we would upgrade the building fire alarm system as part of the sprinkler addition for the courthouse. Access control might want to be expanded to provide additional security and control of who enters the building and through which doors. Overall, there is pretty good camera coverage within the facility, but there are a few areas that could be enhanced with the security camera coverage. And so we would look at where maybe there are some gaps in that as part of our design. So a couple other low voltage systems, the courthouse paging system could be replaced. Its head end equipment is no longer supported. And then there's a clock system that functions, but could also be improved if that system wants to remain as part of the renovations. So with that, I know that's kind of a long laundry list of items, but you know, a lot of the equipment and a lot of the systems, especially in the courthouse, are still original from the 1960s. And so given that it's about 70 years old, 60 to 70 years old in a lot of cases, now is definitely a good time to invest in some modifications and some system upgrades.
All right. Thank you, Jared. This is Ron again. Ben, is it possible for you to share the screen? Maybe I'll try to people his presentation.
Ron, if you want to try to share it on your end, see if that works. If not, I can share it again.
Right. Can everybody see that screen?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. So what I want to do tonight is talk a little bit about the process that we went through and then lead into the floor plan design where we're at today. As I had mentioned before, this is a very collaborative effort, especially up front when we're dealing with programming phase. What you're seeing on the screen tonight is actually the departmental summary of the space needs assessment. So you can see listed here are all the departments. Now we met with all those departments, sent a questionnaire, met with them several times, phone calls, emails. In essence, trying to understand their space needs, that document that would basically turn out to be about a 40-page document. As you can see here, the list of departments. This is the summary page. We always start with your existing space, and we like to have the department think about 10 years out. The last thing you want to do is design a facility that's maxed out the day you move in. So we have to think about some future growth without being unrealistic. And as Ben had mentioned, typically with county departments, we find that space is not grown nearly as much as in the private sector. So that these space moves out 10 years, realistically the space will probably last a good 15, 20, even 25 years for some departments. What I wanted to show you is an example. This is just one example. Again, you guys do have the report on file there. But this is just, for example, the clerk report, how we walked through each department as we met with them. We identified all their positions in their department. Then we identified all the common areas within their department, so like waiting areas, front counter, work copy areas. We identified all those. We identified their existing spaces and asked for the growth out to 2030. Here's a good example. We saw just a little bit of growth. The clerks 1 and 2, right now there are 12 clerks, and by 2030 they could see that increasing to 15. So this is just kind of a common thread of what we did throughout our space needs assessment. We identified what type of space they would be in. WS stands for a workstation. PO stands for private office. We then assigned square footages, reasonable square footages, to those positions. So, for example, a private office for the clerk report, 165 square feet, not a large office, but that means that that's enough space for that position to hold their file storage needs, but as well as be able to conference with up to maybe 2 people, maybe 3 people in 155 square feet. We identified the existing space, and then that space needs projected out to 2030. So that was consistent with all departments, all 26, 27 that we interviewed. At the bottom of this, then, what you see is a total net area for this department, 3,900 square feet. Off to the side, what you're not seeing here in the spreadsheet is we actually have multipliers for these numbers to get what we call interdepartmental circulation. For this department, we estimate about 850 additional square feet. So a total department value of 4,767 square feet. So that is an important number for us as we start to look at the floor plan, start moving departments around based on a date. So again, you can see that's 4767. If we come back to the original summary spreadsheet, we see the clerk report. Staff totals went from 20 to 23, and there's the 4,767 square feet for that department. With that, what that meant is on the summary, tallied up all these departments, and we get to just under 150,000 square feet. The next number that you're seeing down below here is we always put a multiplier to that number. That multiplier accounts for mechanical rooms, public corridors, toilets, all the things that are in these departments. 35% is a pretty common number. We typically go anywhere from 30% up to 45%, depending on systems and things like that. But what that was telling us is right now, based on the projected 2030 space needs, we would need a facility at about 200,000 square feet roughly. Again, this is just a starting point for us to start testing. What you're seeing in your existing, you basically total up, and we actually took the square footage off the existing floor plan, and you're at about 167,000 square feet. What that told us initially, without doing anything else, is that you're probably, to meet those space needs to 2030, probably looking at about 30 to 35,000 square feet of additional space in your facility. So that was the starting point. Now, the process we went through, as we walked through all the different departments and got the approval first of all the departments, then we did take this spreadsheet, again, it's about a 40-page document. We took this to the building committee for their review and approval. All this was done prior to us even starting to lay out the floor plan. It was really kind of a starting point. So, with that being said, our next step was to start laying out floor plans. What I'm pointing out here, this is just a site plan, overall view of your site, based on the floor plans that we developed. So this is South Center Avenue, just to orient you here. Here's Main Street along here. The white portion that you're seeing here, that's your existing facility. And based on department adjacencies, space needs, security requirements, we broke up that square footage that we felt we needed for the additions into 3 different key areas. One is what we were calling the East Addition, and that's primarily to help out some of the administrative type departments. We had another addition located here for a course addition, primarily driven by security. We'll get into that floor plan in a little bit. The other component or addition you're seeing here was a law enforcement center, sheriff's department, jail, functional space. And then there was this small request for an addition here. That is an elevator addition for the judges. Basically, the judges, as they park right now here, a request was, and they enter the building at this location, the judges have requested if possible to get an elevator here in the case that we have a judge with accessibility issues, as opposed to that judge walking through the secured entrance down public corridors to get to his suite where his chambers are, that they would have access off the backside. And I'll explain that a little bit in the plan. The other component, we identified this on the site plan. This was long term with a request or someone had asked us, is it feasible to put additional jail housing on this site? And the answer was yes, based on some of the existing functions within the building. It did make some sense that long term you could put additional housing on this site here. You would have to rework the existing parking ramp, but it could be done. Again, we didn't take it any farther in this study. That was something that was seen 30, maybe 50 years out, but we identified that that was feasible. The next component on the site plan, right now your MIS department, which is your information technology for the whole facility, is located in a separate older building across Central Avenue over here. The discussion has always been, let's try to see if we can get MIS into your existing facility someplace and or in an addition to improve efficiency with them working right in this area. So what we identified right now is MIS. Show you that in a minute. But the discussion was then this building would get raised over here and you would introduce surface parking. Basically, we can get about 35 to 40 stalls, 37 stalls on this site. Your overall parking count right now today is 107 stalls in this area here. This addition, we did lose 7 stalls to put us at 100, but with the additional 37, we've got 137 total stalls, so a net gain of 30 stalls on the site. And that was a concern as we move forward with this project, buildings and grounds, to make sure that we didn't take away parking. If anything, is there an ability to increase parking for the facility? So that was the site plan. So I want to walk through the floor plan a little bit here. This is your first floor plan. Just again, identify that the Center Avenue is out here with your existing parking through here. Main Street is out along here. North is to the left over here. So on this plan, just identify the addition. There's the addition we talked about here. The courts addition is located here. And then the law enforcement center addition is located here. And that's that smaller elevator addition that we had talked about. So one of the things we went through the study, we wanted to really try to get workflow to improve, make it easier for the public to access these different departments, to relocate departments so that the efficiencies between departments that work together on a regular basis can be met. So what we've done here in this floor plan is, again, just to orient you, this is that main secured entry. That is a really good point of entry that you have to your facility. That's a single point of entry for anybody going to support or administrative department. We still maintain this secondary lockdown lobby entrance to the sheriff's jail. Those are both in. So over along this side to the north, I'm basically going to draw a line from this point, from the secure entrance point to the north, or to the left on the screen. What we did there on the first floor was we reorganized all your land departments and the departments that were closely with the land use on the first floor. So as you can see here, zoning, land information, park, land and water conservation are really all within one department. Staff can flow between these areas. What we've also identified is one common reception or waiting area. So when the public secured to the secured lobby, they come to this location here. They can access any one of these departments, these counters at this location. Much easier for staff to deal, or for the county, or I'm sorry, for the public to deal with different departments. A lot of times when they come there, they might talk to a couple different departments. The other two departments, and one of the main reasons we located the addition here was we want to make sure we could register deeds and the treasurer also on this floor. Again, for the ease of public, they're coming into this area. It's all right here. Very efficient for them. Also very efficient for your staff to work together. So up on this bar, we basically still have the register of deeds. We have the treasurer, and then we even split up land information a little bit. They're real property listers and their land surveyors work very closely with the treasurer basically on a daily basis. So like we relocate those to that area. The public, again, has one counter area to come to. They can address any one of those three departments at that location. The next area that I want to talk about is the central portion of the building right here, and that's the court. One of the first things we did was we looked at relocating the clerk of court closer to the front door. The clerk of court, that department really acts as the front door to the court facility for the public. They come to the front counter there, which is located here, regular basis, whether it's paying fines, whether it's the fine out court date, you name it. We wanted to relocate clerk of court right off that main front lobby area. The other element then that you're going to see in the pink are your courtrooms. One of the things I will say is your courtrooms or their locations were functioning well. We didn't want to disturb that. Right now, the courtroom staff is branch A, branch B, and on the next floor up, C and D. The reason that works really well is as we start dealing with circulation patterns, how the public gets to the courtroom, how the inmates get to the courtroom, and how the staff gets to the courtroom, this made a lot of sense to keep these courtrooms in this location. Primarily due to inmate transfer. And a lot of times on renovation projects, very difficult to get your inmates to the courts without having them go to staff areas or public corridor. What you have working for you right now is you have here elevator here that's closed off to the public so that inmates can be brought up this elevator and can be brought directly into courtroom B, can be brought directly into courtroom A, right into the well of those two courts, without ever traveling through public circulation and or staff space. The other component here is how your public gets to these courtrooms. The white is a public corridor here. You can see the waiting areas that are developed here and here. They come right into their gallery seating areas right here. Come in here to the gallery seating there. So inmates coming in one way, public coming in a different way, their paths don't cross. The other element to this, which is one of the primary reasons for the addition of health security, was now your staff travels along the back circulation corridor and they can enter these courtrooms off the backside. They're not going out the public circulation to get to these courtrooms. That's very critical from a security standpoint. It works very well right now for your courtroom. It does not work right now very well for your hearing in their current location. Your two hearing rooms that you have are about half the size of what's recommended for the Supreme Court guidelines. So we want to increase those up to between 1,000 to 1,200 square feet. And we've located both hearing rooms on the first floor. We see hearing room 1 at this location, hearing room 2 at this location. The idea being that the public accesses the hearing room from the public corridor side, and the clerk and the court commissioner and family court commissioners, everybody back here enters the courtroom off the bench side here, or off the staff side here. So we've eliminated one of those major security issues that you have right now, and that's that right now commissioners have to go through public circulation to get to the current hearing. The other issue that Ben had mentioned with the court, I want to say, and we haven't completely laid out the courtrooms at this point, but your courtrooms right now really don't meet ADA requirements that are required for the Supreme Court guidelines. And what that means, for example, is your judges. The state of Wisconsin requires a request that judges enter the courtroom at the elevation of their bench, typically 20 to 21 inches off the floor of the well of the court, and it has to be accessible. So, for example, here what we have identified schematically, if this is a bench right here, that's your jury box, your gallery seating where the public comes in. We've introduced and reconfigured this area here to get some stairs up, but also have the ability to put a lift in so that that judge can enter the bench at this location. On this side here, we actually have a ramp on this one so the bench can access. Once we get laying out the courtroom, we are going to have to look at how the clerks get to their stations and how the witnesses get also to their stations. They're typically elevated one step up. Typically means a 6 to 7 foot long ramp within the courtroom, and that can affect the size of the well of the court. So we'll be looking at those issues. The other request for branch A, courtroom, was to introduce a ceremonial court. Right now, your courtrooms are between 1,700 and 1,800 square feet. Supreme Court guidelines suggest at least having one court, minimum one jury courtroom, to be up over 2,000 square feet. Closer to the 2,300 number makes more sense. So what we've done is we've blown out the back wall and blow out the back wall, relocate these jury rooms that are currently in this location over here, and introduce the 2,300 square foot branch A courtroom. All right, corner bench, the jury box, and then the gallery seating would remain in its current location. That way you can get additional gallery seating in to seat more of the public. One of the last things we always look at for these courtrooms, even in the schematic level, is the jury box locations and how the jury goes from there to the jury room for deliberation. The idea being here, inmates are brought in on this side and will sit at a table over here. Your jury will be brought in and will leave to deliberate for this courtroom, back door here to this jury room. From this courtroom, they'll come out this door and into this jury room. Again, not crossing paths with the inmates. So we're trying to get that circulation to work within the courtroom themselves. Yeah. One last comment here. You can see here, this is that elevator addition that we talked about. The idea with the judges parking here, they can walk up this area, enter into this existing stairway, go out over to the judges' chambers. There's also an elevator here to get them to the second floor. So that's what that elevator addition is about, to get them that accessible route to their chambers without having to go through the front door, down the public corridor, and into their. If they need if they have a judge that has some accessibility issues. Real quickly here, other departments on this floor in this area, as we had mentioned before, family court has a small suite here. Public access office shared waiting area here. Register and probate also has some public access needs. They would come in at this location here. One of the things that we looked at for a lot of the departments, especially the court department, limiting the public from getting back and walking around the back of house department spaces. So, for example, register and probate, the public can come into here. There's a window. If they have a meeting with one of the counselors, they can be brought into this conference room. That's it. This is a controlled lockdown door. Your staff can come in through this side, hard access out. So the public is kept right up in front. No more walking back into the department unless requested and they're escorted back. So again, trying to control where that public can go. The other component for the court is your jury assembly space. Right now you've got one jury assembly space, a little smaller than what this one that we're proposed here. Your other one is on the second floor and the county board way down here for jury assembly. Which means you're bringing juries all the way down the public corridor to the court. So on jury selection day. So what we've done is we've split those up. We've got one jury assembly room, seat the size of it here, right adjacent to the two courtrooms. And you'll see on the second floor we've located it here, right adjacent to the two courtrooms. A couple other departments on this floor. Right now your CJCC department is kind of scattered in different locations in the facilities. So we wanted to bring them all back together, close to the court, close to clerk of court, and we created a small suite at this location on the first floor. And then we also had your medical examiner, they come present near the court. So their office space is located here in a small suite. Again, this is only 20 feet wide, so it made sense that some of these smaller departments go along this bar. We've introduced a staff break room here. You're going to see it on the plans a lot in H1, 2, 3, 4. Those are all air handling spaces, mechanical spaces. We kept those all intact, but that's a lot of infrastructure with ductwork and everything going to those areas. Same with the adjacent electrical room. Keeping all that in place, as Jared had mentioned, a lot of equipment and things will get changed out on an as-need basis, but we wanted to keep the infrastructure where those spaces were at. We've proposed here, with the addition of the both hearing rooms and the support rooms down here, additional public toilets at this location, and we have some existing public toilets here. One last thing for the courts before I move on, is we had introduced some additional conference room spaces. Those are attorney conference rooms. The last thing you like to see in front of courtrooms are your attorney meeting with their clients right out in the public, where you've got family members. It's very emotional. Good to get those people out of the corridor and meet with people in these private conferences. We want to make sure we address that issue. The next component I'm going to have Kevin speak to a little bit. On the first floor is the sheriff's department and the jail.
Good evening, Kevin Anderson, Potter Law. So what we've done is a small addition of about 3,000 square feet on 2 levels. And on this level, we have the dispatch area, which has 4 workstations, and it's self-contained with its own toilet room and a break area. Adjacent to that is the patrol area, and what we were able to do is move patrol out this area to free up some space in the existing sheriff's department. Now, all of this is being done to be more efficient, better safety and security for everybody. And a lot of what in the sheriff's department right now, some of the offices that they're working on 65 to 70 square feet, and a lot of that doesn't meet the current DDA requirements. So the other thing that very well is that we're keeping control of the sheriff's department and keeping those efficient.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, I'd like to move to the second floor. Believe me, it'll go faster. Sorry about that. The second floor. Again, you can see the court here to the south and to the north, some of the more administrative departments in this location. So, like we had done before, this is that main entrance point on the floor below. From this location to the north, what we've done is we've maintained other administrative departments keeping the court south of this line for the most part. And one of the things we wanted to do was kind of consolidate some of the conference areas, and we wanted to take advantage of your existing county boardroom. Right now, your county boardroom is maybe used once or twice a month, and that's it. So the discussion was for the county boardroom, and that's the blue area here, was to reconfigure this space. Right now, the front of the boardroom is here. Let's locate the front of the boardroom to the north. Have the fixed seating in that boardroom in this area here. Introduce operable wall here and here and there, acoustical operable wall. Well, what that does is on non-county boardroom days, you have the ability to have 3 good-sized conference spaces that's used on a daily basis. So we felt that was very important. What we try to do is really kind of create a conference center hub at this location. We've relocated veteran services here, and we've introduced a couple other additional conference spaces. There are 5 conference rooms kind of at the hub between the administrative department and court type department. We are showing a green roof area here. Now, whether that comes to fruition or just thing develops, who knows, but you have the ability to have that access out onto this roof level here at this location. Other spaces on this wing, we wanted to make sure that the county clerk still had some presence, but we wanted to relocate the county clerk adjacent to the county boardroom. They use that boardroom, they control that boardroom. The idea being as the public comes, they come up the stairs, easy access to the county boardroom, direct access to the waiting room for the county clerk space here. Also within the county clerk's area, we added the county board chair's office. Again, this department along with the county board chair has access without going to the public corridor into the county boardroom right at this location. And so there's some good adjacencies being dealt with there. We also had an additional conference room, county board chair can use that, as well as the county clerk, but we also have access off the public corridor, so this is checked out for some departments. And then the last component on the second floor in the north wing, again, this is the addition right here. We combined into one suite, 3 departments that work on a daily basis together. And that's finance, or 4 departments, I'm sorry. That's finance, administration, HR, and corporation counsel. Court counsel, we went back and forth whether it be located by the court or over by administration. And in reality, most court counsel departments work on a daily basis with administration, HR, those departments. So it felt that it made more sense to keep that located with that department or within that suite. And again, one shared waiting area at this location to access for those departments. Makes it easier for any of the public coming to that area. One stop kind of area to go to. So then on the rest of the second floor, I had mentioned before about the 2 courtrooms and how they stack. I won't go through all of that. The existing jury rooms are basically in the same location as they are currently, with the exception we've added this corridor through. But the layouts seem to work well. It's getting inmates up, getting the public to these courtrooms, and getting staff to those courtrooms. We just have to make sure that those courtrooms are easy to find at the end of the day. Last fourth component is the jury assembly training. This is that second jury assembly space. And again, these jury assembly rooms aren't used on a daily basis. So ideally, we take technology in these spaces so they can also become training rooms for staff, for the whole county, whoever needs to use it. Both jury assembly rooms could also be as training on non-jury assembly days. We have introduced additional conference space, the law library, all around this waiting area here. This waiting area, actually on both floors, there's actually space here. We're blowing that out. Conference room, and I believe an office, the security office, here, to create a better waiting area space here. So you've got a nice waiting area for this courtroom, good sized waiting area for this courtroom. The other 2 spaces on the court side are child support and the district attorney. Again, these are 2 departments that work closely with the court and the public. So the idea of having child support right off that public stair, security office kind of in this area, security on the floor right below this open stairs, seem to make a lot of sense. Child support can be one of those departments where some controversy can arise. People get very emotional when dealing with some of the issues of child support. So again, within the department, one of the things we wanted to do was, if possible, limit the amount of public that comes back into the office area. So for example, staff or public can come up to this waiting room, checking at the counter, they can be allowed into this conference room. Staff can come up to this conference room this way. This is a lockdown, secured access door, meet with staff or clients here, and then clients can be escorted back out and leave back through here. So again, you're trying to minimize how much of the public is getting back into these department areas in some of these more emotional type departments. District attorney, again, is kind of located in this area currently. One of the things that was requested by the judges was to eliminate the door between the district attorney and the judge's chambers. Fear of mistrials and things like that, realistically, setting up appointments with the judges and being brought back into this space. So we did eliminate that. So we got to their office space in this area with the main public waiting area off that location. All right, and then the ground floor real quickly. So the ground floor, again, just orient you, this is north over here, that's the north wing. A lot of this space is physically the infrastructure type space, the air handling, the MIS server room, central services, the boiler room. We kept those spaces all in. Again, you got ductwork, wiring, everything going into those spaces. Let's leave those be. But the one element we did in the addition at this location was we relocated MIS. The ground floor at this location, very close to their training room. It's close to their existing MIS server room. Makes it more efficient for them to be in this area, adjacent to those spaces versus across the street. We will be looking at ways to get some daylight to that department, and we think we can get this grade just bolt down here and get some windows in and around this area. I'm going to let Kevin quickly speak to the emergency management or the jail.
Okay, again, this is another, 2,000 square foot, area. And basically what we have down here is the, emergency management. And what's nice about this, this is, access for after hours, down on grade, and it has its own separate door. And you can get into the lobby here and you're let into the operations area. And this room can also be used for the sheriff training. And one of the issues right now is that the emergency operations happens off-site, and it takes them sometimes 2 to 3 hours to set up. And here you have this all on site, and make that transition a much better situation. Then what we've also looked at in the existing jail is at the existing vehicle cells where we've added a holding cell or a safety cell. Typically, all new jails and most jails have. There's an existing program space right here, but we're looking at a way to divide that in half and give them 2 program areas, or leave it open and give them an exercise area which they do not have right now. We were able to expand the booking area, which right now is pretty limited. So we were able to do that, and by doing that, we had to remove some holding and receiving cells. And so we were able to add a few holding cells and group holding and receiving cells where the existing visitation is. And what this does is it helps the jail staff classification when they're trying to find where to put people in the jail. Again, a lot of these things, the Department of Corrections has indicated that they lack, but they haven't said anything about having to bring everything up to speed at this time. But eventually, if there's ever any modeling done in the jail and stuff, it would be required to bring everything up to the existing Department of Corrections requirements.
So, thanks again, Kevin. So with that, everybody, that is, and thank you for hanging in there with us. There's a lot of thought through the floor planning phases, a lot of collaboration. Again, we just didn't come up with this plan and give it to staff, but there are many staff meetings. The staff did a great job reviewing our floor plan, the plan. It was very, and then of course we met with the building and grounds committee and walked through the plan. So that there was a lot of collaboration for the last 7 months in regard to getting these floor plans to the level that they are at today. So with that being said, the next component, I think Anthony is going to speak to the budget. And Anthony, if you would like, I can.
Rob, before you move on, can you move back to your floor plan for just 1 second?
I sure can. Which floor would you like?
Anyone's actually okay. I just wanted to point out the break, the red line break that we have between the base project and the alternate project. And as we move on to the budget, you'll see on my budget sheet, the reasoning for this is I wanted to give you guys some flexibility when you saw these numbers. Essentially, when we calculated this, did all the takeoff, spoke to subcontractors, got their opinion. What we asked them was to figure everything north of that line as the base project, and everything south of that line as it's been an alternate. So the courts and administration being the base, and then we'll call it the sheriff and jail, law enforcement center being an add-on alternate. So I just wanted to point that out on the floor plan. That red line that meanders through the middle of the building there, or approximately the middle of the building, on all 3 stories is the break when I'm talking about those 2 separate areas.
Very good.
Ron, did you have anything you wanted to finish up on?
I did. I'm good to go. Go ahead. Did you want the screen, or can we just go off of here?
No, you can just leave it there. I tried to condense this down. There's obviously a lot of data takeoffs, as I noted before, that calculate out to these numbers, but I wanted to condense them into something that the board and the committees could, more easily digest. As you can see, they're relatively round numbers. That represents that, this is very preliminary as far as design goes in this project. That being said, when we developed these budgets, we did have enough information on the floor plan to go through and actually, take off the new walls and the new windows and cabinetry and flooring, and enough to send to the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing contractors as far as the report that came up. They had enough information to develop some, reasonably accurate conceptual / schematic budgets at this point in time. So the way this sheet I organized it was on the left side, the rows are the different scopes of work, and then the owner cost. And then the columns going along the top are what I referenced on the floor plan. The first column being the courts and administration north of that red line, sheriff and jail being the work south of that red line, and then the MIS parking being the relatively minimal work associated with demolishing that building and developing it as a parking area. So I also grouped these into little different areas as far as scope goes. The upper subtotal above the subtotal goes into the, what I call the hard construction numbers, the bricks and mortar type numbers. I broke that down into the new additions for both sides, renovated areas, the elevator addition, the replacement of existing exterior windows and doors, the replacement of existing roof areas. The county has been running a program where they've been fighting up chunks of roof on, I believe, annual or approximately annual schedule. And I asked for the roofer to give me a budget number for, I guess, the next few years at least of what's scheduled for roofing replacement. Then I also broke it down to jail mechanicals. I thought that was a relevant number. That's the actual work in the jail pods themselves as far as mechanical goes. If you remember going back to the beginning of this meeting, we talked about replacing some of the toilet fixtures that needed a shredder system, the piping, et cetera, et cetera. And then miscellaneous site work is just that. It's essentially some of the parking or drives, the sidewalks that need to be done to accommodate some of the new additions. I have the design fees, which would be Potter Lawson and their consultants, their engineers, to design those work. And then the only parts below are things like asbestos abatement, materials testing, security system, construction costs, which we don't allocate anything for at this point in time, utility expenses during construction, which would be obviously us tying into your existing electrical service and gas, et cetera, during construction. I wanted to note that in case the county wanted to account for that as part of the project. Audio visual, information technology, fixtures, furnishings, and equipment, owner moving costs, relative to the phasing, which I'll get into, and then temporary space and trailer rental costs, which is also part of the phasing, which I'll touch on. You'll notice that some of those are highlighted yellow. The reason for that is those are primarily things that will be outside of like a construction design contract. And frankly, these are more placeholders for those numbers at this point in time. I call them allowances. Those numbers can change quite a bit depending on decisions that the county staff or the committees want to make on how this project is tackled. But for right now, I think we're at least covered with placeholders. You'll see those now, and I have a project contingency as the next grouping down there. And you'll see the rows and the columns both total up into the final number in the lower right, which is $33.3 million. So, are there any questions at this point in time how this is set up or how this is laid out or formatted? Okay. As far as the phasing goes, when I talk about phasing, I talk about the construction schedule. Obviously, this is not a job where we can just take over the entire courthouse and sheriff and jail department and do the project and then hand it back to you at the end. This is going to have to be done in phases to make sure that your county services can operate, while the project would be happening. So, I think the logical first phase would be, if the project goes ahead as presented tonight, would be to start with the additions, finish those spaces up, and use those spaces as what we call flex spaces to help move existing departments and existing areas into those temporarily while we then go and renovate those existing areas. So, you know, and then we move on and go through that. We're thinking it's about a 2.5-year project when you talk about these phases. That's once construction starts. Initially, it was speaking with Ron. He was anticipating that Power Lawson and their engineers would need about 9 months to design the project. So there's obviously a lot of work between now and then as far as when we look at these numbers and how we get the final bid numbers. But there are some strategies where we could, if we wanted to beat winter, for instance, next year, where we could possibly have Ron and his engineers design an initial set of plans that is to help us get started on that first phase, which is the building addition. What we want to do ideally is get those built and enclosed before winter of next year hits. As I referenced before, we don't carry anything for winter construction costs. It's something that can be done, but ideally you try to avoid those. You know, we looked at also this project. Our question came up in the last committee meeting that we had back in August, I believe. And we discussed a lot about this project, about how big driving factor of this was the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, and how, especially on the north end of the building, you know, many of those systems are approaching, 55 years old. So I was asked to come up with an approximate budget, what this project would look like if there were no additions and all we did was renovate the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems for the existing building. And the number I come up with is about $17 million. So that's obviously a significant part of this whole project, just over half what we're estimating. That's not just the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. Obviously, some of that entails taking ceilings down and replacing them, putting up temporary partitions as you're doing that, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that really kind of gives you an idea of how much it really is, existing space and what's needed as far as mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. As far as, obviously that's a big number, $33.3 million, and, I guess another question was, possibly, if you're looking at reducing costs, that's one reason I had that broken down into the two sides of the building, if you will, the courts and administration, as well as the sheriff and jail. I thought that might be a natural point if the board and committee decided they wanted to bite this project off in more than one piece. Other than that, you'd be talking about, significantly changing the plan as you were showing. We'd have to start reducing. We'd have to start reducing the additions, and that would obviously reshuffle around some of the new layouts. So that would domino effect into a very different project, and we'd have to reevaluate as far as cost goes. That's all I had for a summary. Ben, I don't know if you have questions or anything that I missed that I've spoken about in the previous meetings that you'd like me to cover.
I think, Anthony, the one question that did come up is, as we start looking at the cost of this, and does it make sense to investigate what a new building would look like? So could you run through the estimates that you came up with and Power Lawson came up to replicate this facility as a brand new facility?
Yeah, so actually separately, Power Lawson and us both decided to answer that question and come up with what we thought a new facility in a greenfield that would cover all of these uses for this new plan cost. And we actually both came up within a couple of $1 million of each other, and you're probably looking at something in the $70 to $75 million range to start over in a greenfield, similar to your highway department project.
And then I think the other question that came up that you talked through a little bit was, where do you kind of see with some of the economic unknowns, where do you kind of see the construction industry coming in the next few years? And I know people have expressed concern with material costs, et cetera. How do you see where the next 12 to 18 months might go in terms of construction industry? And is that advantageous or not advantageous to the county?
Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball. I think a lot of people, even not in our history, have realized the last handful of years at least been pretty busy. If you drive anywhere into Madison or most of the if you're on ride. That being said, just observing some of the plan holders list and the bid results from around the state and the state projects, I think we're entering into a time of extremely beneficial construction bidding as far as a buyer's market goes, if you will. For those of you not familiar with how this works, is essentially we get a final set of plans, if approved, sometime next summer, late summer, and then we would break those into bid packages, which we break this down to like 15 to 20 bid packages and send them out to dozens and dozens and dozens of contractors to bid on their respective work. So everything in the project gets competitively bid per law. And what we're seeing in similar projects right now is that there is a very large amount of bidder interest and a very large amount of really beneficial looking quotes out there as far as that goes. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but the environment we're sitting in right now reminds me more of 2009, 2010 than it does of 2018. So I don't know if that's gonna continue into next year, but that's my expectation. Ron could probably speak to that too. They obviously work in this environment as well.
Yeah, I would pretty much agree, Anthony, with what he said. It sounds like as far as inflation rates for next year, what I've seen in some of the catalogs and things that are out there, we're really looking at maybe a 1.8, 2% increase over the next year or so, and then going from there. So realistically, it's pretty favorable for the next year, 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, and to put that into relation to the last few years have been more like 5.5 to 6.5%.
Correct.
2008, 2009, we actually saw a little bit of deflation. So whether we'll get there or not, I'm not sure. It probably obviously depends a little bit on some factors with the, obviously current factors that the world is grappling with, as well as, any kind of economic stimulus packages.
Could I ask a question quick? In all of this planning, did we ever explore the feasibility of geothermal or other green energies?
Jared, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think given the constraints of the site and the size of the building, geothermal isn't too much of an option. If it was, it would need to be highly supplemented with chillers and boilers. So that one, just given our existing site, wasn't really anything that we looked into too strongly. We definitely could, but then that would also require, tearing up probably most of your parking lot in order to put in a well field. So there'd be some added cost there, and like your boiler systems. And a lot of that piping is already in place where it wouldn't necessarily work too well with a geothermal system. Things that we could look at, there's obviously a very large roof on this building, so PV could definitely be something that we could at least put infrastructure in for to support adding solar panels in the future, or it could be part of the project as well. I think, honestly, given the age of a lot of the equipment, the fact that there isn't a building automation system, the fact that there's T12 lamps for all your lighting, just upgrading to current almost baseline systems, LED lighting, and digital building automation systems, that you're going to see a very significant energy reduction in the building just by doing those baseline things.
Any other questions?
So just a reminder to the board too, as you look at this, the full packet was emailed to you almost probably a month ago now. It was about over 100 pages, an email. So if you need us to resend it out, so a lot of the information you saw tonight was in that packet, from the space needs to the floor plans to the mechanical report, etc. If you need copies made, I know we've had a couple folks reach out. Just let Tammy know. We'll get that taken care of. But again, it was on an email sent a while ago. So many of these detailed information you had a chance to read through before tonight. If you need that resent, just let us know. Mr. Chair, if there's no more questions, we do have Mr. Murray on from Elders too. So if don't have any more questions related to the design and construction side, we did have Elders start putting together some structures of what this looks like from a financing package, just so you could get a picture of what it might look like, just for discussion purposes, so you have an idea. And so, Ron, if you could unshare yours so Joe can share his screen so he can talk through a couple of those items, and then we can take it from there. So, Joe, go ahead.
Ben, before we continue, was that
Hold on,
email,
Joe. Hold on, Joe.
Was the email sent out by Tammy?
I believe so. I'll tell you what. I'll have her resend it out.
You don't need to resend it. I just need to know who to search for.
Yeah, it was a very large file, so it would have come as a share file because there's a lot of pictures, a lot of diagrams in there. So it would have come like in the shared file system she sends out for large documents. Go ahead, Mr. Murray.
Everybody able to hear me?
Yes.
Able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Great. Congrats. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Joe Murray from Elders. We're proud to be the county's financial advisor. As the administrator mentioned, we were asked to provide a preliminary financing plan as to what it would cost to finance the proposed additions. Plan that you see in front of you, that it's on my screen, is based on the assumption of...
Joe, it's not coming up. Can you try resharing? If not, I can quick share it. Here it comes. Mark's sharing it. Hold on 1 second. Okay, now it's up. Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
That's all right. Are you seeing my cursor, or are you just seeing...
Yep.
On the screen?
So I see the cursor, unless that's Mark's.
Mark's moving it on his side. He's running through his machine, Joe. So just kind of, Mark will highlight stuff for you.
All right. I'm sorry about that. As I said, we were asked to develop a financing plan to how to finance the entire project. What's on the screen is, I believe, I can't see your screen since I'm seeing mine. Unshare my screen. So what you see before you is a financing plan to finance $33.5 million worth of construction project. As you just heard, I heard it was $33,300,000, but we just used a nice round number. And it's important to highlight in here that what I just heard. I'm sorry.
You're good, Joe. Keep going.
Okay, I'm sorry. From what I heard in the presentation here is that the construction period may extend to 2.5 years. We had assumed this in borrowings, but if it's an actual 2.5 year construction project, it could extend into 3 years plan, but I'll go through what we've got at this point. The expectation was that approximately in June of next year, the county would start paying what I heard also in the presentation later than that. But the plan was to borrow the largest part of the money in 2021. The plan would have been to borrow just over $24 million. That would have provided $24 million for construction projects. And what this is important is that it can be non-bank. And what that means is that the county can issue up to $10 million in a calendar year at the tax exempt rate that banks qualify to get tax rates on if they become invested. Once you issue more than $10 million, banks cannot get tax exemption on the investments. If they were to buy investments, they are not going to be investments, then rates are going. Losing investments, the rate is going. Losing bank qualification is more important in outer years. It costs 25 to 50 basis points. A basis point is 0.01%, so about 0.5% on your borrowing. We had designed this plan that we expect rates next year, 2021, are probably going to be more than 2022. So blow through the bank qualification in the first year, reserve it in the second. That's why you see such a large discrepancy, $24 million in 2021 and $10 million in 2022. We also included, and this plan is conservative, in that if you look towards the bottom, you'll see the estimated interest earning of only, both issues of only $42,000. As the plan gets more developed, the county is able to identify a better draw schedule. We will work to help the county potentially identify investment strategy to maximize the interest earnings, reduce the cost of borrowing. Once we know a draw schedule, this assumes that the funds are going to be spent out on average of half a year. So if it's longer spend on period, there could be more interest in you can borrow less. You could go to the second page, Mark. Sorry, I'm trying to. Oh, there it is. Thank you. So now that you've heard the plan development, try to project out what's the impact going to be on the county's tax. If you recall, when I was before you back into the earlier borrowing, talked about a tax cut. You swap the tax increase in one at one time, or do you want to phase it in over 1, 2, 3 years, what have you. The plan that's presented before you as one tax cut. We have a tax increase for 2021, or I'm sorry, 2022. In the blue column, it would be going from 21 cents, 48 cents, 27 cents. And this is all based on projections, and it can all move, but this is, again, being conservative. The rates we have included are based on a recent scale and an inflationary factor. The Fed has said that they anticipate interest rates to remain low for the foreseeable future. There is some unrest, if you will, or concern about the election, but that's because it's a presidential election. But the Federal Reserve, as I said, has said they anticipate interest rates to remain low for the foreseeable future. We're not anticipating huge movement in the next year. But if you go to the left, see the borrowing for $1 million. That's cost included in cost of insurance, my fee, bond counsel, rating. That's why the size is increased. You'll see that it's structured with some principal funds. That 1.7 million, it's kind of high, but it was intended so that when we get over to the left column, that it's kind of smooth. You see a 27 cent increase in 2022, and then it stays level at 47 cents for the next 5 years. Then it drops down by 12, then it drops down again. That structure that we need to provide for flexibility in the future or future borrowing needs. And excuse me, and to try to make it so it's more, as I said, follow the tax cut. We can rearrange principal amounts, 2021 issues, so that can in over a couple of years if that's what you like. Just to give you an idea. The second, the middle column is the 2022 A estimates. We were again trying to be conservative. We put in 2.5% interest rates. Projected true interest cost of the 2021 A is roughly 1%. This has got 2.5% all the way through. So it is intended to provide ability as we move forward. As you see in the book on the structure this level. Hello?
You're still good, Joe. Go, keep going.
Okay, I'm sorry. I hear voices. We have structured 2022A with level debt service, but depending on how the bids come in on the 2021A, we have moved maturities around to try to match that column on the right for the taxing, so that it's has more flexibility. It's a little too far out for us to try to treat with the family, and I would prefer not to. I'd like to be able to come back before you as a thing and say you saved $1 million in stuff, but structure is done so that it has flexibility that we can move maturities around and try to maintain this blue column structure that's presented before. As I said, this assumes borrowings, depending on the draw schedule, further into the time. They came to the 3 borrowings, and we would again try to structure again around this framework that we provided for the tax impact. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for finance? Questions for finance? Everybody loves it.
Hey.
If not, anything else you want to add?
No, Mr. Chair, I think thank you for everyone's attention. Obviously, there's a lot of information that's been put out tonight. Some of you have been involved with this for a while, and for some of you, this is your first chance to see what some of the committees have been working on with staff. We will be working with the various committees to start talking about those next steps as everyone begins to digest this, so we can start looking at the next course of action to include: do we move forward? Do we scale it back, or do we not move forward, and everything else in between. But we wanted to start getting this information out so we can begin that dialogue process. Obviously, like with Joe, a lot of his work can't begin until we finalize what the structure might look like, so we can find the best value for the county, depending on the size of the scope of the debt, and it doesn't carry over multiple years. So we want to just give some information out so you can kind of get your arms around it. And then we'll take on the next steps of getting more information and a policy making decision for those steps, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anything else? Anything anybody wants to add? Thank you for the presentation. Thank you to our experts here. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you, guys.
We will move on from special order of business to Land and Water Conservation Committee. Supervisor Falker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Resolution number 2020.
28.
Number 2020-28, authorizing the application and implementation of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources Lake Monitoring and Protection Network Grant. Executive summary. Starting in 2021, the Department of Natural Resources, DNR, will provide annual support to the counties for lake monitoring and aquatic invasive species prevention activities, such as the Lake Monitoring and Protection Network Grant. The amount allocated in 2021 for Jefferson County is $13,003.36, and a grant application is required to be submitted in order to obtain the funds. As part of this grant application, the Wisconsin DNR requires specific language to be adopted by the county board, which has been included in this resolution. The Land and Water Conservation Committee considered this resolution at its meeting on October 21, 2020, and recommended forwarding to the county board to apply for and implement the Lake Monitoring and Protection Network grant. Whereas the executive summary is incorporated into this resolution, and whereas the Land and Water Conservation Department is interested in obtaining a cost share grant from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources for the purpose of lake monitoring and aquatic invasive species prevention activities, and whereas the Land and Water Conservation Department attests to the validity and veracity of the statements and representation contained in the grant application, and whereas a grant agreement is requested by the Wisconsin DNR to carry out the project, now therefore be it resolved by the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors that the Land and Water Conservation Department will meet the financial obligation necessary to fully and satisfactorily complete the project, and hereby authorizes and empowers the following officials or employees to submit the following documents to the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources for financial assistance that may be available. Task, sign and submit a grant application that is for the Land and Water Conservation Department Director. Enter into a grant agreement with the DNR, and that's the Land and Water Conservation Director. Submit quarterly and or final reports to the DNR to satisfy the grant agreement as appropriate. That's also for the Land and Water Conservation Department Director. And submit reimbursement requests to the DNR no later than the date specified in the grant agreement, LWCD Director. Be it further resolved, Jefferson County Land and Water Conservation Department will comply with all local, state, and federal laws, rules, regulations, and ordinances relating to this project and the cost share agreement. Fiscal note, the total grant awarded in 2021 will be $13,003.36, which will cover the cost of staff time spent implementing the grant deliverable. Mr. Chair, I move for Resolution 2020-28.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Who made the second?
Second.
Well, okay. Supervisor Christensen made the second. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none. All in favor of this grant application, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Which takes us to item 11, proclamation from the chair. I will read this proclamation for you. What number do we have on this?
3.
3?
Yep.
Proclamation number 2023, proclaiming November 15th to 22nd as 2020 as National Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week. Whereas for over 25 years, the National Coalition for the Homeless and National Student Campaign Against Hunger and Homelessness have sponsored National Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week. And whereas the purpose of this proclamation is to educate the public about the many reasons people are hungry and homeless, included but not limited to the shortage of affordable housing for very low-income residents, untreated mental illness, chemical dependency, unexpected job loss, or health crisis, and to encourage support for homeless assistance service providers as well as for community service opportunities for helping those in need. And whereas there are many organizations in Jefferson County that are committed to sheltering, providing supportive services as well as meals and food supplies to people experiencing homelessness. And whereas the theme of the National Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week 2020 is Share Your Table. And whereas the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors recognizes that hunger and homelessness continue to be a serious problem for many individuals and families in Jefferson County, and that an estimated 530 individuals are homeless and another 1,400 individuals are doubling up or living in substandard housing. And whereas Jefferson County is committed to a vision of a community where all persons are afforded the means to meet their basic needs in order to lead healthy, meaningful lives, now therefore be it resolved that the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors encourages all citizens to recognize that many people do not have housing and need support from citizens and private, public, nonprofit service entities. And be it therefore further resolved that the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims November 15th through 22nd, 2020 as National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week to raise public consciousness of these vital community issues. I ask for your support in passing this proclamation. So moved by Supervisor Morris. Do I have a second? second by Supervisor Schultz. Any questions, discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, it is proclaimed. And we have appointments by our county administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. By virtue of the authority vested in me in section 59.18, parent 2, parent B of the Wisconsin statute, to request confirmation of the following appointments. Mr. Sierra Nesbera, Port Atkinson to Human Services Board to fill an unexpired term ending November 1st, 2022. Supervisor Russell Coots of Jefferson, Wisconsin to Human Services Board for a 3-year term ending November 1st, 2023. And Supervisor Augie Teets of Watertown, Wisconsin to Human Services Board for a 3-year term ending November 1st, 2023. I respectfully request confirmation of these appointments.
So moved by Supervisor Morris. The second was by Supervisor Jaco. Any discussion, questions? All in favor of these appointments, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, they are appointed. Which takes us to public comment of a general nature. Anyone here with public comment for a general nature? Seeing.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, we do. Okay.
This is our public comments, but do you know that the city of Watertown in particular is still looking for poll workers on November 3rd? And so we've asked some of our employees to step up and help out. We've got about a half a dozen people going there. But if any of you are interested, or you know somebody who might be interested in helping, contact me or Audrey, and we'll put you in touch with that.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Any other public comment? Take us to announcements. Supervisor, excuse me, Administrator Waymire.
So 2 announcements. So one is a fun one. So Ms. Listel's here, but I have put flyers out on everyone's seat, and we've been putting it out there. But we're doing a unique fundraising event this week to build off our drive-through pancake breakfast that we did. And so we're actually doing a pork chop dinner to sponsors from improvements at the Fair Park grounds. Amy and her team have assembled some great sponsors. So Jones Dairy is a great example. They're donating quite a bit of things, from tokens to pork chop to a whole bunch of other good stuff to help support what's going out there. So if you need dinner on Thursday night, please stop on by. We do have tickets for purchase here till, I don't know what date, here shortly, downstairs. Ms. Palm will sell them to you tonight. The other thing, you can pick them up at the door. And then also, if you have some time, I know Amy is looking for some volunteers to maybe season some of the pork chops, etc. So if you would like to look at volunteering maybe Wednesday night or Thursday, just let her know and she'll help you out. The other thing is just goes back to the beginning part of what we did tonight. It's part of our budget process. Just a reminder, any amendments are due to my office by next Monday, November 2nd at noon, so we can do some analysis and prepare them for the Finance Committee on Thursday, November 5th. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And just a reminder, our next meeting is November 10th at 20:20, 7 p.m. That's where we will take care of this budget and vote on it. Mr. Schultz, you.
Just kind of a sad announcement in case anybody didn't know. John McKenzie passed, who has served on the Human Services Board, and he has served on the Board of Health. He has been a very, very active citizen in this county, and so
On more than just county business.
what's that?
On more than just county business.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Many things.
Yeah.
Yes, he had.
So if you hadn't heard, he was 89. But I think many of you have served with him in one of those committees.
And I have one request or announcement for everybody here. Please go into your mailboxes and clean them out. Some are getting packed full. And maybe those that have been mostly Zoom to meetings, but if you're in the courthouse, you folks on Zoom, your mailboxes are jam full. So please come and clean them out sometime. Thank you. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion for adjourn. Mr. Falker.
I just forgot to tell anybody. I went to one of your electronics, recycling events or whatever up at the fairgrounds, and it worked out really nice. It cost me $70, but I got rid of all my junk in the house. So, mostly electronics, but it worked out. It was great. So
Good. It's good to know. Is there any announcement or update, Mr. Administrator, about the tours, since we had to cancel them today?
No, we will. if you're interested in a tour, please reach out to Tammy so we can try to schedule it. We're trying to make them safe, but we're also trying to make them efficient because when we're doing the tours, they're taking about 2 to 3 hours. I'm also taking courtrooms out. We're taking the jails out. So we want to be safe in that process. So we want to make sure we maximize that time. So if you're interested in a tour of the courthouse and facilities, please let Tammy know so I know who actually would like to do a tour, and then we can figure out the schedule from there and work it in with everyone's schedule that works best. And just one other quick announcement as a reminder, we are having testing every weekend, Friday and Saturday at Fair Park until the first weekend of December. So if you're interested, it's every Friday from 10 to 6 and Saturday 8 to 1. Officially, we have a limit of 300 tests. Last weekend, the National Guard brought a few extra, which was great because we had well over 300 people on Friday coming through. So please, if folks are interested, please utilize that asset because they'll be disappearing here at the beginning of December.
Thank you. Any other announcements? I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved by, and we have a second. This is not debatable. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Haven't heard too much. Talked to several times.
Go get my dinner tickets now, except I left my wallet in the car.